It is recap time for a fantasy horror movie titled The Mortuary Collection. It begins with a paperboy riding his bike and entering a peculiar town named Raven's End. By the end of the boy's route, he notices that the papers he's been delivering outside a creepy house have been piling up. He gets curious and decides to ring the doorbell. He peeks through the mail slot and attempts to take a picture with his camera. He gets frightened when he sees an old man staring at him from the other side. The boy struggles to pull his camera out since its strap is stuck. That's when the town's mortician opens the door and says hello. His name is Montgomery Dark. The boy runs away, too terrified to even retrieve his camera. Some time later, the mortician runs a young boy's funeral. Right after the funeral, he notices a young woman attempting to open the boy's coffin, so he stops her. He tells her she wouldn't like what she'd see. She says her name is Sam and shares that she's there to apply for a position. When Sam sees the vast collection of books, the mortician explains that they contain his client's stories. Sam then asks him to tell a story, so Montgomery narrates a tale that occurred in the 1950s. Emma is at a party and goes to the bathroom to take the money from the wallets she stole. After throwing them away, she hides a pocket watch in her bra. As she's about to get back to the party, she hears some noises coming from the medicine cabinet. Curious, she tries to open it with a nail file and ends up cutting her hand. When she finally opens the cabinet, Emma is horrified to see a tentacled monster inside, so she closes it as fast as she can. Emma screams for help while trying to hold the door down, but no one answers. The monster eventually goes quiet, so Emma attempts to leave the bathroom completely silently. However, the pocket watch she stole falls and bangs against the floor. She tries to run when the cabinet opens, but the tentacles grab her and break her bones as she's pulled inside. Sam states that the story is not bad but notes that she missed a plot twist. Montgomery lets her know that he has many more stories. Soon after, he asks Sam to sign a document to make her employment official. Montgomery then takes Sam to the foyer, where she sees several pictures of morticians who serve there. As they get to the viewing parlor, Sam inquires about the boy's story, but Montgomery notes that some tales are just too unsettling to recount. So Sam asks him to tell a different story. The mortician recounts a tale set at a university in the 1960s. A frat guy named Jake sets up a booth on campus to supposedly advocate for women's empowerment. He argues that women can now sleep with whomever they want, as long as they have protection. After distributing condoms, he invites the women to a frat party. He tells Todd and Connor, his frat buddies, that they're doing a service by helping impressionable and vulnerable women to sleep with them later. As Connor sees an attractive girl walking to her class, he goes to her and offers a condom. Jake promptly interrupts them and tells Connor to go check on something with Todd. The girl, named Sandra, notices that Jake doesn't look like a freshman, so he admits he's not one of them. Before getting back to his friends, Jake invites Sandra to his fraternity's party, and the girl says that maybe she'll be there. As Sandra goes to her class, she passes by a billboard with a bunch of photos of missing male students. Later that day, Jake is glad to see Sandra arrive at the party. He doesn't waste any time and immediately takes her to his room. As they make out, Sandra pushes Jake to the bed and removes her clothes. Sandra hides something in her skirt before crawling towards Jake. As she reveals the item to him, Jake is disappointed to see that it's a condom. He reluctantly wears it and soon asks Sandra to turn around in the middle of the act. While she's looking away, Jake secretly takes it off and continues to fornicate with her. The morning eventually comes and Sandra is gone. Jake notices that she wrote her phone number on the mirror. He immediately wipes it off, but most of the numbers are still visible. All of a sudden, Jake feels something revolving in his stomach, so he quickly runs to the bathroom and throws up. Connor arrives and notices rashes all over Jake's belly. Jake sees it and decides to go see a doctor. At the clinic, Dr. Harold Kubler prescribes him penicillin for the rashes, but he soon notices something very strange in Jake's file. He asks Jake to stay put for further examination and leaves the room. When Jake looks at his file, he is appalled to see that it says he's pregnant. Back in his dorm, Jake promptly takes a pill to terminate the pregnancy, but he pukes it all out after a few seconds. Jake then resolves to call Sandra when he notices his belly is quickly growing. Since he erased her number earlier, he has a really hard time reaching her. When Jake finally succeeds, he asks her to meet him at her house. As Jake gets to her place, Sandra's father groans in frustration when he sees Jake's belly. His wife immediately calls Sandra and gets everything ready to deliver the child. When Sandra enters the room, Jake yells at her for getting him pregnant. When she asks him if he wore protection, Jake apologizes and confesses that he secretly removed it. Sandra looks at him with pity but immediately walks away and sets up a date with another guy. As the fetus moves inside Jake, he asks her father how the baby is supposed to come out. Sandra's mom explains that it will come out the same way it got in. As Jake screams in pain, the baby forces its way out of him, and Jake's blood sprays all over the room. The mother then pulls the baby out and takes it to the nursery, which is full of other weird babies. As she walks out of the room, one of the infants raises his talons in the air. Sam comments that she's impressed with the tale, adding that it has all the elements of a good story. The mortician then leads Sam to the embalming room and shows her the body of a young woman. After Sam points out that the woman seems perfect, Montgomery notes that her upper palate contains traces of magnesium, which is common for patients in catatonic states. He proceeds to tell the tale of Carol Peters and Wendell Owens. During their wedding ceremony, Wendell seems happy to be marrying the woman he loves. All of a sudden, the church goes dark after the priest asks him if he vows to love her until they die. When Carol creepily screams at him, Wendell wakes up from the nightmare. He hears Carol coughing heartily, so he moves to her room to check on his wife. Wendell seems desperate, unable to do anything for his catatonic wife. One night, when he returns from the grocery store, Mrs. Avery notices all the food he's carrying and brags about the meals she ate on a recent cruise she went on. As she waits for the elevator, the lady states that now that her husband is gone, she can go anywhere she pleases. The elevator arrives, and Wendell decides to take the stairs. He gets home and begins preparing food for Carol. He puts everything into a blender to make it easier for her to digest the food. When Wendell has Dr. Kubler come over to check on Carol, he informs him that she seems to be quite stable. After the husband asks how much longer she has, the doctor estimates that Carol will live for another year or so. Wendell gets worried, saying that he can't afford to keep her alive for another year. Kubler then hands him some strong pain medication and hints that Carol could die if she took 2 pills or more. He adds that the substance does not leave a trace, so it would be impossible to determine if Carol had ingested it. Later that night, Wendell dresses up for a candlelit dinner with his wife and presents her with an Arctic hare figurine. After he asks Carol to show him a sign that she's there, she simply stares into space. Wendell gets very frustrated and slams his hand on the table, but promptly apologizes. He then mixes the pills Dr. Kubler gave him into Carol's food and feeds her. Suddenly, Carol grabs his arm with a good grip, and Wendell realizes that she might be responsive after all. He quickly removes her restraints and pumps her stomach to make her vomit. Although Wendell is relieved after succeeding, the lack of restraints causes her head to fall to the table. To his dismay, he finds that she has been impaled on the figurine. Wendell instantly contacts Kubler for help, but Kubler just tells him to dump Carol's body and not call him anymore. He decides to put Carol's body inside a chest, but since she wouldn't fit, he has to cut her into pieces. As he's about to chop off her thigh, she screams all of a sudden. Wendell gets all startled and pulls it from her head, making her go silent. He eventually succeeds in making her fit into the chest. As he drags her body into the elevator, his neighbor asks him to hold the elevator. Wendell denies his request and forces the door to close, crushing the man's hand. The elevator starts moving but soon comes to a halt before it reaches the ground floor. When Wendell tries to force the doors open, Mrs. Avery hears him and offers to call the police. He desperately insists that there's no need for it, but the lady does not change her mind. Suddenly, the elevator doors close, and he realizes that Carol's blood is leaking out of the chest. Wendell feels completely lost and tries to escape through the hatch, but he slips. All of a sudden, the chest unlocks itself, and Wendell carefully approaches it to get it open. Before he gets to it, the elevator starts descending very rapidly. He gets frightened and looks out the small window, seeing a vision of himself and Carol living happily together. To his dismay, his wife's decaying corpse emerges from the chest and forces him to kiss her. When the police finally get there and open the elevator, they find the man sitting on the floor, reciting his wedding vows in an endless loop. Montgomery reveals to Sam that Wendell went crazy and had to go to Kirksdale Mental Asylum. As they head to the basement, Sam remarks that his stories are predictable since they are all about people paying a horrible price for their sins. Montgomery agrees and says that no evil deed goes unpunished. As he's about to push the boy's coffin into the cremation chamber, Sam stops him and confesses that she was never there to apply for a job. She reveals that she's there to see the boy, Logan, because it's her fault that he passed. Sam begs the mortician to let her look at the boy one last time, and he grants her wish. It's Sam's turn to tell a story, the story of how Logan died. It turns out Sam is Logan's babysitter, and she's watching a horror movie titled The Babysitter Murders while he sleeps. When Sam goes to the kitchen, she sees a message on the answering machine. Dr. Kubler and his wife tell Sam that they will probably come home a bit late, so they instruct Sam to make sure Logan is asleep. After checking in on Logan, Sam turns on the radio and begins preparing a meal for herself. In the meantime, a reporter interrupts the movie to inform the citizens that a riot broke out in the local asylum. The police encourage everyone to lock their doors since some inmates might have escaped. Shortly after, Sam takes out the trash but fails to see the broken window by the door. As she gets back inside, she spots a man with a head wound sitting in the living room, so she immediately goes to the kitchen to grab some kind of weapon. Just as she gets a cleaver, the man turns up right behind her, causing her to drop it. The man seems very confused, so Sam attempts to help him by cleaning his wound. Seconds later, the phone starts ringing, and the man gets all rattled. When the machine picks up the call, Logan's mother tells Sam to lock the doors because a psychopath known for choosing kids as his victims is on the loose. Sam then sees his eyes gravitating toward Logan's toy, so she puts the man's hand into the meat grinder. When she tries to hit him with a meat pounder, the psycho knocks her down with a kick. He slowly pulls his injured hand out of the meat grinder as Sam recovers. She gets up and tries to stab him, but he blocks the blade with a chopping board. Disoriented, the man moves to the living room and screams on the phone. Sam goes after him and jumps on his back, while Logan's mom is still on the line. As she tries to choke him, he manages to slam Sam on the floor. He then goes to Logan's room, but the boy isn't there. When Sam hears his screams, she hurries to Logan's room. She grabs a fire poker and they start fighting again. Once again, the guy manages to slam her to the floor and proceeds to punch her several times. As the Kublers arrive, the man keeps looking for Logan. However, the boy's parents can't get in because of the door chain lock. After failing to find the kid, the man goes to Sam and starts strangling her, but stops as soon as she says he's not a killer. When the man gets up and tells her that it's over, Sam pushes him down the stairs. Just as he regains consciousness, Sam drops a TV on his head and ends his life. When the Kublers enter the house, they recognize the dead man as the babysitter. The news reveals that the escaped inmate is a woman named Charlotte Gibbons, also known as the Boggy Bay Tooth Fairy. Logan's mother panics after not finding the boy anywhere. When the oven beeps and they look inside, they scream in terror upon seeing Logan's remains. When Montgomery asks Charlotte why she came to the mortuary, she removes a tooth from Logan's remains and tells him that she needs it for her collection. Charlotte then stabs Montgomery to keep him from telling her story. However, the mortician just laughs at her as embalming fluid leaks out of his wound. Charlotte gets scared and runs away. When she gets to the door, she finds herself back inside the house when she goes through it. She runs once again and gets to the library as Montgomery calmly chases her. When he catches up to her, he reveals that he was once just like her. He thought that he could escape the consequences of his actions. As Montgomery stomps his cane on the floor, several books fall from their shelves. He adds that Charlotte would be surprised to learn how many of the stories in the library are hers. All of a sudden, many dark spirits of children crawl out of the pages. She screams in pain as they start attacking her. After Charlotte dies, a spirit grabs a tooth from the ground and puts it on. After putting Charlotte's body back together, Montgomery leaves the house. He walks outside feeling relieved, but soon explodes into dust. Charlotte comes back to life inside the house and screams as she sees her patched up face in the mirror. As Charlotte becomes the new mortician, she tells a story to the paperboy. When the paperboy tries to leave, she yells that she's about to make dinner. Thanks for watching. If you like our content, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe.